everyone. Oh, we're very excited now. Welcome back to Babbling about Bridgerton. We have completed our discussions on season 1 and 2 of Bridgerton. The Duke and I, the Viscount who loved me, and we're now on to not season 3 just yet, but the spin-off, Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story, which is not an original book at all. It's an original show based on the characters from within the Bridgerton books, and therefore the show, basically this Queen Charlotte show, comes purely from a fondness for Bridgerton the show.
Yes.
And I like that about it, because bold statement to begin with, I think this might be my favourite of the 3 seasons of television
Wow.
we've got.
Okay.
Maybe that's because it's more directly focused on the royals and therefore feels more historical, even though
Historical.
it's fictional history, or like fictional interpretation of history. Yes,
Yeah.
obviously there's some genuine, real things that happened, that did happen, and people being who they are roughly, and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But it is obviously very fictional history. But I don't know, there was something about Queen Charlotte, and I mean, both of the other seasons, obviously, as we've talked about on Morgan Hasn't Seen TV, babbling about Bridgerton, do you mean? Have hooked me completely. I've got very, very into what's going on in them. Maybe it's because Queen Charlotte is more focused, or more singularly focused. Because
Okay.
Bridgerton itself has got a lot of
A lot of characters
various
to
moving
follow, lots of
parts.
things to go on. Yeah.
Yeah, that you do get interested in every single one of them. It's very, very good at doing that. But because you are entirely you're with one person, really, aren't you? Throughout a slightly shorter season as well, of 6 episodes. And I know the last 2 episodes of Queen Charlotte are, I think, an hour and a quarter and an hour and a half. So they're a
Yeah.
little bit longer, but ultimately it's shorter. And that more focus on one person, I think, just helped me become that much more invested in what was going on in Queen Charlotte. And I just think, I don't know, by the end of it, I was very, very emotional with what was going on. I
Aw.
think this is a beautiful season of television, but
Yay.
just ultimately very sweet. I mean, I think the whole point, what I understand about Bridgerton now, is really as an idea, as a message, it's fighting through the pressure of whatever society throws at you
Yeah.
in all these various ways. And yeah, mostly you're obviously dealing with noble families doing very noble family things, involving themselves with royalty. But
Yeah.
pressure's pressure, whatever level you're on, and I think everything Bridgerton seems to really find the fight within its characters to battle through all
Yeah.
the pressure to eventual happiness. And that's kind of what we're getting here. And I just felt that just was punched in my face more strongly in Queen Charlotte than it was in the 2 seasons of Bridgerton. Not that it wasn't there,
Okay.
but I just felt it more strongly.
Yes, and I think we dug a little bit deeper. I mean, we get this insight on the queen, why she's so fixated on making these love matches and picking a diamond, and because of how strong her love story was. Why she's so quick to not really put up with nonsense because of all of the things she went through. Um,
Yeah.
Not only that, but we also learn kind of why the Ton it gets to be as diverse as it ends up to be in the world that we know of Bridgerton, and the precarious position that residents of color found themselves in, whence this new queen who looked like them came onto the scene. and Lady Danbury kind of leading the charge in protecting
Yeah.
people like her in this society and elevating people like her in this society, and
And
why
really wanting to take that responsibility on for
Yes,
herself, really
kind of paving her
fighting
yeah, paving her own
against.
path and not resigning herself to any kind of, scary fate that she was facing.
Yeah,
Um, and so it really speaks to who we know her to be in the world of Bridgerton, and also speaks to why she's so close and how she's so close with the queen, and how the
yeah,
queen
because
kinda she has the queen's ear in a way nobody else does because they did and do have this genuine friendship that started, very early on when the queen was
yeah,
just coming to this new place at 17 and had no friends and didn't know how to navigate, and Lady Danbury really stepped in and helped her with a lot, while also kind of discovering things about herself. I loved learning a lot about Agatha, I loved learning a lot about Charlotte, and I loved learning also a lot about Violet and,
mm,
getting a little bit of, jumping into our present Bridgerton time to understand where Violet's head is at and her kind of preparing herself to find new love or even have some type of physical emotional connection again to someone after this great love that she's had. So I love that we learn about her because it's always focused on so many other characters. So I loved that we got this insight on the world as a whole and these kind of side characters that have such big stories behind them that we never knew.
I suppose let's begin by talking about the what you would call present day story in
Okay.
Queen Charlotte then, or where Queen Charlotte herself is older, Queen Charlotte herself is as we see her in Bridgerton because she's struggling with a succession crisis of
Yes.
her own. None of her children are able to have children, and the one
Yeah.
that they did have died.
Yes, so none of her kids have produced legitimate heirs. All her sons are content with sleeping with random women who are not
Yeah,
giving them who have children, but not children that can be legitimized as royals. And her daughters all are having trouble conceiving and having children. And so her one son that did have a wife who was with child died in childbirth.
yeah,
So she is very much frustrated, about having an heir, somebody to carry on George's name, and this seems to be very important to her. We also see moments of her waking up in the middle of the night, worried about the state of George because, obviously she's not sharing a space with him because have seen through the first 2 seasons of Bridgerton his kind of mental decline that he's going through.
yeah.
Um,
And
so
as we've said, we know George III, of course,
yeah,
was a very mentally unwell monarch,
yeah,
famously so, and did get considerably worse as he got older and older and older. And
yes,
I I really appreciated just how, I suppose respectfully is the right word, it actually showed George III's condition in
yeah.
Queen Charlotte for being a fictional history, but genuine history because it's not entirely or fictionalized, I should say,
Version of
fictionalized
of
history.
actual historical figures, yeah.
It seems to be very careful in just making sure that they put respect on difficult circumstances, and I
Yeah.
like that about it because it's easy, and I think we're taught in a simple way, maybe when we're taught history at school, and obviously Americans, you're taught about George III in a totally different way,
Yeah.
probably to what British people are taught about George III. Evil English George III, we want our country and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. But the simple version of what we're taught about George III is he was the Mad King,
yeah.
which is unfair. There's so much more to George III about that.
Yeah.
This fictionalized historical show shows us that there's so much more to George III about that. If you watch one of the many movies made about the life of George III, you usually do see there's far more depth there. But I really like that something like Bridgerton can show us that because it can make me then go and want to buy a big tome of a history book on George III and Queen Charlotte's life, their real life,
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
isn't anything to do with Bridgerton's
Yeah.
fictionalized world. And I liked that about it. But going back to more of what's happening in the
Modern
present day,
Bridgerton
quote
time,
unquote,
yeah.
George the Fourth, I think it was his daughter that died at the
Yeah.
beginning, who would become George the Fourth, and it her relationship with all her children, her like at this point 13
13,
children,
yeah.
I think. I think they actually had 15 children at one point, Charlotte and
Yeah.
George the Third. But her 13 children, her relationship with them is strained. It's
It's
kind
very
of
distant.
distant. It's
Yeah.
they don't really know each other. All the children know each other well as siblings. They seem to get on
Mhm.
just as any other siblings get on. But their queenly mother, their royal mother, seems this way far off figure that is only focused on other things and not them. And she doesn't view herself that way. She views them as way off doing their own thing and they should
And
be here
she
with
was an
me, their mother.
yeah, and she was an incredible mother, like, she even has Brimley, like, tell her, "Wasn't I a great mother?" And Brimley kinda just
Yeah.
stays quiet and just says,
Brimsley
You
doesn't
were
think
a
she
wonderful
was.
queen."
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
And that's what makes, you know, Charlotte such an interesting character, particularly obviously after this season of
yeah,
television. But anyway, because she follows true with the rest of Bridgerton. She's incredibly grey as a character.
yeah,
She does so many good things, but has some serious, serious flaws.
yeah,
And it's just a perfect way of crafting a character to root for because they're human. And you see ultimately they want to do the right thing,
yeah.
despite
Sh
not always doing the right thing.
Yeah,
And
she's just
with it
completely
with all this
unaware.
Yeah, with all this present day Bridgerton stuff, with all the children and the succession crisis, she is not aware that she is coming across as distant to all her kids.
Yeah, and then
So
that being the crux of it, it's not just them, like, being aloof or not caring. She's kind of set it up for them to be ignored and her not to really care what's going on with them. So now all of a
yeah,
sudden, when she wants something from them, she's putting all this pressure on them. So you think that's the thing, like, why are you putting this pressure on us if this is not what we want? It's more a case of, oh, now you're paying attention to us. And the only reason you're paying attention to us is because you want us to give you an heir. And that's where
well,
their kind of frustration comes from, and by the end, she kind of understands when, they come to her and say, "You don't know us, you don't know anything about us, you don't care about us, you never took interest in what we took interest in." Like, so, that's what has hurt us more than anything else, and so when she does come to that realization, she does make this effort to praise them and be good to
yeah,
them and thank them and when her son does come to her finally, because she does force two of her oldest sons to get married to these princesses. And when they do finally come to her and say, "We are with child," she's very happy and excited for them. She goes to hug her son, and he really doesn't know what to do at first because
yeah,
this is not a normal thing for her to do. And then he ultimately, like, returns her embrace and seems really happy that this is happening.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's this nice step forward for this realization of the queen to really learn the absence of who she was because she put all her time and devotion and energy into George, really.
But you
Um
know who that new baby would be, don't you? I don't know. We'll probably see that baby at some point in the actual
Maybe.
Bridgerton series.
Yeah,
Is that
now. Mhm.
baby of Edward, the son, the fourth son of George and Charlotte. Edward is the new baby. We are with child. Let's all be happy. We have a succession. Is Queen Victoria. That
Yes, because
child will become Queen Victoria.
the girl does say, I think it might be a girl, so would that be okay?" And then, Queen Charlotte says, "Oh, yes, we need more queens," and things something like that to that effect,
Yeah.
so,
And think about what you want about the Victorian Britain. It might have been full of horrible, horrible poverty, and it certainly was, more so than near enough ever. Um, it also brought great things to the world.
Yeah.
So, was the Victorian age a success? That's a question for not us. But
Yeah.
that's a touchy subject. But
Yes.
that
And
child
on
will be Queen Victoria. And I like it, it's me that becomes obsessed with finding those tiny, genuinely real historical
connections.
details about this kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, well, I
That
mean, when we did that first episode, and you asked me like what I thought you would think of Bridgerton, my thought was that, you would like the historical setting aspects of it and the things that were kind of accurate to history or the interesting reinterpretations of real things in history. And that's what I
yeah,
thought you would enjoy about the show. So I liked this one in particular, really doing their own interpretation of real historical figures, and you got really pulling some interesting thoughts from that and really liking the interpretation of them. So,
yeah.
yay.
And I think also in present Bridgerton time, you get pretty interestingly a as you said before, a new insight into Violet Bridgerton, the mother,
Yes,
Lady
so we do
Bridgerton.
get this really great friendship growing between her and Lady Danbury. We saw a little bit of that in season 2 after, Antony's wedding kind of fell apart and the 2 of them coming together to formulate a plan and kind of bring the situations together and all of that.
Yeah,
Um,
and we see a little bit of it form in what makes up most of the season of Queen Charlotte, which is obviously them as younger people,
yeah,
them, Queen Charlotte just starting to be a queen. We see a little bit of friendship blossom between a young Lady Danbury and a
yeah,
young Violet.
yeah.
So, I like seeing a lot of the connections have still still are there in
Yes.
the 1810s that we're in actual Bridgerton
Yeah. Yes,
than
and
the
so
like 1760s or something like that that you're in
in the Queen
older
Charlotte.
Bridgerton, Queen
Yes,
Charlotte.
and so, what does come revealed is a secret that Lady Danbury
Oh
has been
yes.
hiding from her good friend Violet all of these years, which we do get a reveal to in, Queen Charlotte, which is very interesting, and I think will play a really interesting part in I keep saying interesting, a really interesting role in season 3. So as we learn in this series, kind of a point where we're jumping very closely in and out of, present Bridgerton time and past, is we see Agatha, her kind of awful husband has died, and she forms a friendship with Lord Ledger, who is Violet's father. So we see a
Yeah.
young, like maybe teenage 14, 15-year-old uh Violet, and her father's sweet and kind. I love that he calls her brains and beauty, and her mother's just kind of this terrible, judgy, racist kind of person who hates
Yeah.
that these people of color are getting titles in the ton and all this kind of thing. But he's very excited about it. He has struck up a great friendship with uh, Agatha, Lady Danbury, when her and her husband do have titles and they throw the first ball of the season. He, like, literally says to her, I think we're gonna be great friends. Nobody is dancing because nobody is everyone's scared of race mixing. But Lord Ledger takes the first step and asks Lady Danbury to dance. So we know him to be this very, really nice person. So once Lady Danbury's husband dies, they go on these nice strolls together and get to know each other. And um, you know
Once Lady Danbury's husband dies, it is a massive cause for celebration because not
Yes.
only does she now get to go on to nice walks with new friend Lord Ledger and start flirting with him and end up, having some
Mm.
fun times with him.
Yeah.
Um, Lord Danbury is
The
a
worst.
hilariously disgusting man.
Yes, he's old, he has, like, gross dentures, and, every time that he wants to have sex with her, she's very much not into it. She takes a bath immediately after. She's not into it. Her head's banging on the headboard. She's just staring up at the ceiling. He's just doing his thing, and it's very much like how Mama is kind of tell what they tell their daughters, just lay there and let your husband have his
Yeah.
pleasures, which it was described a lot in the book, the one Bridgerton book I read, when these girls kind of have these inner monologues about what they think the intimate act is lay
It's an
there and let your husband
awful
have his pleasures, which is what Agatha is marriage is essentially, and she
yeah,
hates it.
very
And
much so.
she was raised since 3 years old to be his wife, so she knows everything that he likes. She's meant to like everything that he likes, and I love that despite kind of despising him in that way, she still very much wants to elevate him. She's happy when he's happy.
Yeah.
So when in society they do get these titles for the first time, and he's not being discriminated against anymore to be a part of the hunt or be a part of the gentleman's club, she's genuinely like looking off in the distance, smiling at him and happy for him. And when she tries to like share in the moment with him, he like tells her to be quiet, quiet woman, like those kinds of things.
Yeah. It's
um
it's almost though you get the impression that, I mean, I got this anyway from Lady Danbury, but that she's very much, I don't, it's selfish is a bad word or a negative word, but selfish but in a nice way. Like she's pleasant to near enough everybody,
yeah.
but she will 100% put her own desire above everybody else's. And Lord Danbury being allowed into all these things, ultimately to her just means she's going to be allowed into all these things, and her own goal to mix everything, to her own goal to desegregate the population
Yeah.
will work, because that's her ultimate goal. She doesn't really care about the individual Lord Danbury being on the hunt. She cares about what that means in the bigger picture, which is why
Yes.
she's smiling at that point, I think. And
Yes.
Lady Danbury's all about the bigger picture. She's all about
Yes.
everything working out as
Working in the
she
end, the
would
greater good
ultimately
of
want
things.
to mold it to be.
Yes, and I like, but I love that even when after he passes, she's very lost. She doesn't know herself because she's like,
Oh yeah.
I was made to like everything he likes, so I don't really know who I am. So when she starts going on these walks with Lord Ledger, that's when she kind of comes into her own. That's when her title's in jeopardy, so she has to take this initiative, and that's when she starts becoming the person that we know her to be
Yeah.
now. And I love that when we
Fighting
do.
against
Yes.
Princess Augusta, played by Michelle Fairley, who's George
Yes.
III's mother.
Yes.
Michelle Fairley's so great in this as well. She plays stern period mothers so well,
Yes,
doesn't she?
probably best known as, Catelyn Stark. I think most people would
Definitely best known as
recognize
Catelyn
her.
Stark.
Yes,
Famously
um
stern period mother, although
yes,
obviously not a real history.
yes, but I also love that when we kind of go to present Bridgerton time, she has this kind of strange moment with Violet. They kind of meet up in a church, and Violet is, like, I think celebrating, uh Edmund's
Edmund's
birthday.
birthday. Yeah.
Yes, and talking about this great love and how much she misses him, and Agatha kind of gets upset by that, and Violet doesn't understand why and takes offense to it, and then Agatha explains that, "You loved your husband, you had a great love, you can celebrate him on the special days. I hated my husband, I loathed him, I donate to charities because he hated charities. So I do these good things just to spite him. So when you talk about this great marriage and love that you had, even though it's gone, I
You are
envy.
fortunate.
You are fortunate that you had that, and I had this loathsome man. So I love that she kind of can look back on that and really give us this insight, and then we see, why she feels the way she does about that whole relationship. So then when she does strike up this really sweet relationship with Lord Ledger and is able to have this intimate relationship with him and show her what what she's really had, it does come up with a conversation with her and Violet, and she does tell Violet that she found love, and had her garden well tended for a period of time after her husband passed.
Great
And
metaphors that are used
yeah,
about having one's garden tended.
tended to, yes. Um, so Violet is very intrigued by this, and we get this scene where I think it's an interspersement of Agatha making love with Lord Ledger, and present day Agatha looking through all these trunks for
Yeah.
this birthday crown that he made for her. And Violet is even telling Agatha at one point the story about how her father used to make these birthday crowns for her and for his friends and things like that. So, um Agatha is looking all around for this birthday crown he made her as it's like intercut with young Agatha making love with Lord Ledger,
Yes.
Violet's father. And then Violet ultimately is waiting in Agatha's drawing room and sees the crown hidden behind something. And so then she realizes what's going on. So how I think
Yeah.
this will play into season 3 is the fact that we do meet a stranger coming back into Agatha's life. We don't know who he is. His name is um, Lord Marcus Anderson, and she seems not very pleased with him being there or pleased with him being around. So when he does start kind of showing some interest in Violet, Agatha's not too
Ah.
happy about this. So I'm thinking maybe on the part of Violet, she will maybe pull some emotional blackmail and tell Agatha, "Hey, well, you had your way with my daddy, so you can't
Let me
tell
do
me what
this.
I can do with this person from your past."
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think that'll be interesting.
I mean, maybe that will happen in season 3. I would like to think that the potential similar, ultimately they both loved Lord Ledger in very
Yeah.
different ways, sure, but they both
Yes.
had great affection for Lord Ledger. Whether
Yes.
Lord Ledger's even still alive, I don't think he is,
I don't
but
think
we're
he
not
is, no.
directly told that he's dead, are we?
No, or
So
what
we
happened to
assume
him,
that he's
but we
dead.
do and at a certain point, he did end the affair because he is a good, noble man, and I'm sure he felt
Yeah,
some type of guilt over that despite his wife being terrible, so he does end is the one who ends the affair
yeah.
between the 2 of them, so that's kind of
I,
an
I
interesting
I'm
thing that's
just
revealed with those 2 characters.
it is. I'm just saying that you have this idea in your head of the potential emotional blackmail, which very much might be the case, but that's you having seen trailers and promo for season 3 that I
Yeah,
haven't
no.
and I'm
Yeah.
avoiding. So this is me thinking, I think now not having seen any of that, going, I actually hope this mutual fondness for Lord Ledger forms a closer bond between the
Between
two
the
of
2
them.
of them. I think it'll eventually come around to that, but I think if Agatha tries to kind of warn Violet or tell her not to go for him or something,
Yeah.
Violet will use that card, I think.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. And I think ultimately Violet Bridgerton probably needs to stamp a bit more authority than she does anyway. She's
Yes,
quite a
yes,
wishy-washy woman
yes.
who
She's
kind of
very fearful of kind of putting herself out there and saying what she
she's
means.
she's the
So,
direct opposite of Lady Danbury,
yes.
really.
So I think we'll
But
see
it's
a more
why,
resolute Violet in this upcoming
yeah,
season based off of what we got about her here for sure.
yeah. It is why, though, the more I see of Lady Danbury, and obviously we get so much of her in Queen Charlotte, I just really like the character more and more. I think she's
Yes,
just
she's
great.
great.
I
Yes,
really do.
and so I love the friendship that we see form between her and the queen. She is,
Yeah,
they want to have Black people as part of the queen's court, obviously, for obvious reasons. And so Lady Danbury is somebody that the queen really learns a lot from, and allies with. And ultimately, Agatha uses that as well as a means to, uh, secure her people's place because her husband was the first that was given a title once Charlotte came on as queen.
yeah.
And so once he died, all of the other Black people in the town are very much like, okay, so what does that
What
mean for
happens
our
now?
titles? Yeah. This is a very precarious situation. So they implore Agatha to go talk to the queen and secure their titles and all of that and get answers. And the whole
But
kind
she
of
has to go through Michelle Fairley first.
Yes, and so they kind of strike up this deal. You tell me what is going on with Charlotte and what's going on between her and George. Tell me what you know, and I'll give you little glimmers of what you want for you
Yeah.
and the other people who look like you in the town.
There
Um,
is that unsteady relationship that the two of
yes.
them have that I
Yeah.
kind of like. It's almost they enjoy the fact that they're both there to argue against each other.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't like that, I don't think either of them would be happy. Even though, okay, Michelle Fairley, Augusta ends the season of Queen Charlotte in a reasonably happy place, isn't
Yeah.
as fearful about her own son and his happiness anymore because George and Charlotte do end the season very, very positively,
Yeah.
very, very on, well with all and really in a happy place. And
Yeah.
that's ultimately Augusta's gain. That's ultimately Augusta's
Yeah.
goal. But the way she goes about expressing that to her little inner circle of people is just very, very harsh
Yeah.
and very, it does come across as terrified while really trying to not seem terrified. Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with the king. Like, sure, if we
Yeah,
all
he
were a
does
bit
have his
more open,
challenges, but yeah, they
like with
won't outright say it.
no, like with everything in Bridgerton, and let's talk. Spend the rest of this episode, please, talking about Charlotte and George,
Yes, yes.
because the absolute heart of the whole season, a wonderful, wonderful depiction of a couple that I think we
Yes.
have in this season. But like with everything in Bridgerton, the language is so beat around the bush that things just get lost in euphemism and metaphor
Yeah.
and not quite saying what you mean.
Yeah, because when, Agatha is trying to tell Charlotte about the issues that face, like, Black people in the Ton, she dances around it and says, "People like us and our
Yeah,
side and this and that." Charlotte has trouble really understanding what her role is and what they're looking to her to do. And so it takes a lot for her to realize, okay, they're looking to me to secure them a place. So when she does in fact convince George, who does not make public appearances, to go to this Danbury ball
mm,
with her, I
it's a
love that
big
when they
deal.
come, when it's this big successful thing, the king and the queen, this interracial couple, this experiment of giving the Black people of the Ton these titles and intermixing everybody, and they're calling it the great experiment. And then when they
Long
get
live
back,
the great experiment, they
yes, and
say.
when they get back home and he's like looks at her and he says, "Look how much change that we've made in a single night.
Mm,
Like, with you by my side, I can do anything." And so I love how their relation, he understands what them being together does, and she was able to show him what them together can do for the bigger picture of bringing people together. So I like that they were able to combine the element of the kind of race divide in the Ton with their love story, because I think that's a
yeah, they do
huge
it
part of the
really, really
story.
well.
Yeah, yeah,
It is. It's a very, very well balanced season, and I think maybe it's done better. Maybe the balance is done better than it's done in the actual Bridgerton seasons because there's just more going on in the actual
yeah.
Bridgerton
We're
seasons.
more focused here. We literally maybe have like 3 major kind of plots
It,
that we're
yeah,
following here, whereas in Bridgerton, we're
it's
following
countless.
yeah,
Yeah, it's absolutely
and
countless,
setups
but
and
it just
yeah.
does such yeah, it does such a great job of balancing everything in Queen Charlotte. And I think after that Danbury Ball was the first and only time I actually felt pleased for Lord Danbury when he's dancing about and they look kinda happy with each other, that they've
Yes!
had a successful ball, but then that's all ruined by the fact that you then get another fairly grotesque sex scene
But during that
directly
scene,
after it.
he dies
Well, that's yes,
in
that's
the
right,
middle
he
of that
does die
act,
in that
and I
scene, that's
love that she
right.
kind of sneaks out to her lady's maid who, like, knows her loathing of this man, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we are done. We're done." Like, they go
Yes,
okay,
let's
and then
hug
they
each
have
other.
yes, and then they have to set it up like, "Okay, you wait here, dress me after. Okay, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna scream," and, like yeah,
Yeah,
and they have to kind of act out
it's
this
great.
distress of the situation is really good. But
But yes,
I think
Charlotte and George. That's
yes, that
Charlotte and
first
George.
meeting, like, the meet cute is adorable, so we set up Charlotte, and I love that we get a whole episode, so we see kind of the beginnings of Charlotte, getting taken from her home, her brother pretty much selling her off to the royals to be this queen. She's not happy to be there, to leave her country and all of this, and nobody will tell her anything about the king, so she thinks he's some ghoul
Yeah,
that so she is scared. And we see all of this, their wedding, their first night, all of these things. And then a few episodes later, we get that whole kind of sequencing from George's perspective, which I love
yeah.
because you're calling the show Queen Charlotte, but it's really about this love story between the two of them. So I love seeing all of that from George's perspective as well and
It,
seeing,
it's so important that we get it all from George's perspective
yeah.
as well, because that episode, I think it's the fourth episode,
Hmm.
it just it does so much to make us not just be on Charlotte's side in her
Yes.
disagreements with George and her not understanding George and all this kind of thing, because George doesn't understand himself.
And
George
he thinks he's
loses,
saving her. He thinks he's protecting her from his madness, and he doesn't want
yeah,
to
by
inflict that
sending
on
her
her.
away.
Yeah.
No, he loses all lucidity and loses all cognitive ability in these episodes that it takes a lot for him to get out of again. When he does get out of them, he is aware that he's just been in one, which is, that just must mess somebody's mind up completely. To be aware of your own affliction, I
Yeah.
always think is worse than to just be afflicted,
Yeah.
which is just, it's
To
horrible
be
what he
cognizant
has
of
to
it and
deal
not
with.
being able to control it, yeah.
But the fact that we see eh, all of that from Georgie's angle as well, because the first couple of episodes are very much, what is George doing? Why is he not allowing Charlotte to kind of be with him?
Yeah.
This doesn't make
He leaves
sense.
her in her own place alone on their wedding night, yeah.
You get everything from his opinion, and it makes total sense from his opinion as well, because you're getting it all from his point of view.
Yeah.
And it just builds the connection that develops and we end up with between the, we even see it obviously in the previous seasons of Bridgerton, but we also see it really, heart-wrenchingly, uh, fiercely at the end of the last episode of Queen Charlotte, when older King George
Yeah.
is has another scene, and older Charlotte obviously goes to see him, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful ending to the whole season. The culmination of the connection that they just have, the understanding that they have for each other, despite all of Georgie's troubles, despite
Yeah.
all of Georgie's horrible, horrible mental illness, that she is just there as a steadfast rock next to him,
Yes,
never
which
letting it phase her.
yes, because the thing that upset her the most was the unknowing, no one telling her what's going on.
Yeah.
Her not
She
being
didn't
privy
c
to
once
what she
as
was up
soon as she
against.
found out as soon
Yeah.
as she found out, she it's like she flicks this switch of, "Okay, let's just go help, because we're just gonna go and help. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
We're gonna go and help him. I'm not here to r now run away. What are you talking about? Why would I wanna run away? He's the king, he's my husband, I'm the queen. This is what I'm doing." It's so, I love that in a person,
Yeah.
that sort of, I care for you so much that no matter what, and it's is a serious, in George the Third's case,
Yes.
it is a serious no
Yes.
matter what.
Yeah, when he says the whole thing about I'm half a man, half a king, and she, this will be half a marriage, and she's like, well, then we'll make it the best half that it can be.
Yeah,
Together we will be whole. Like, ah! and
it's
he
mad.
puts himself when we get that thing from his perspective, we see him put himself through this immense torture with this doctor who thinks he knows
Yeah,
thinks he's curing him, waterboarding him essentially, and burning him, and shocking him and all of these things, and he
Tying
is
him to a
tying him to a
chair
chair
and
and
gagging him.
yelling at him, and he's doing all of this so he can be perfect for Charlotte. He's putting his body and himself through all of this because he wants to be perfect for Charlotte. Um, and so when she finally gets him out of that situation, um, he's still pushing her away because he's embarrassed, he thinks he's burdening her, and he doesn't want that for her. And so she's like, "No, I'm not going anywhere. I'll leave right now if you tell me you don't love me." And so this is kind of
Yeah.
like our big this is "I burn for you." This is, the Antony, "Nowhere would be far enough away."
Yes,
This
yes,
is the,
yes.
"Do you love me? Yes, I love you. I can't breathe when you are not near. My heart calls your name." And that whole kind of, "Okay, we're in this together" moment.
But it takes an awful lot of arguing on Charlotte's
Yeah.
part to
And
actually
even
make George realise that she's going to stay with you, dude. Just
Yes. Yes, and we get the
accept
even
it.
days situation when
Yes.
things
It's
are kind
kind
of
of funny,
secrets between
really.
them. Yeah. Where everyone's just kind of pushing them to consummate their marriage. But there's this misunderstanding between the two of them. She overhears this conversation he's having with his mother where he kind of says something about doing his duty and, "I've betted her, I've done da 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 what you
Yeah.
wanted." So
I've done
now she
everything you
thinks
wanted. Stop hounding me, basically.
Yes. So basically, she takes that as him just, doing these things with her out of some sense of duty and not out of actually caring about her. And so because of this miscommunication with each other, he doesn't know that she's overheard. So he can't explain what he meant, kind of thing. So then they just end up, but they are physically attracted to each other. So
Yeah.
then they just have
Undeniably.
cold sexual encounters on even days, as an excuse to, consummate and make an heir because of all this pressure, but also because they genuinely like want to, but they don't say
Yeah.
that. They're still very
This
cold
is
about
the
it.
this is the funny thing about this whole episode that's full of sex, really. I think
Yeah.
it's the 3rd episode or the
Yeah.
2nd,
Yeah.
and it is clear that when we actually go to seeing the intimacy, that they're really into it. Oh, it's very, very steamy, very
Yeah.
looking into each other's eyes. You're both enjoying this. I'm sitting here, folding my arms like this, going, "You two are both enjoying this. Stop arguing with each other." And then you'll
Right?
cut to the next scene of them shouting at each other and disagreeing and storming off in opposite directions,
And then
and
say
then
it's an
coming
even
back the
date.
next yeah, coming back the 2 days after and saying, "Come on then, it's an even day, we've gotta go and do it again," and then it all being very nice once they get in the bedroom again.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
Yes, until they kind of actually do talk it out and realize and come together, and but then, the fight comes again because it's revealed that she was lied to, she didn't know about his full condition, he's trying to push her
Yeah.
away, but they ultimately come together in this "Do you love me" scene, and she helps him in a big way. He's supposed to give this speech to Parliament, he can't do it,
Mm. Can't get
and
out the carriage, has a
yes.
serious panic attack.
Yes, and so now the higher ups, the monarchs are very much like, "Oh, this doesn't look good,"
Yeah.
"We need to
I
consider
mean
some things." And so then she suggests, "Let's have a ball," and he can make a speech there, and we can make it a party celebrating our new son, our new heir, and he can give a speech there, and she will be
yeah.
with him, and they can, do it in a comfortable space, and so she finds ways to navigate and calm him and, understand him and be patient with him. And, I love when she says, "I will tell you where you are." Like, if you feel lost between the heavens and the earth and you don't know where you are, I will be here to tell you
Mm.
where you are. That's
'Cause
part of that whole
it
big
is,
love
it's
speech.
yeah, but it's that beautiful hiding under the bed situation as well.
Yes.
I'm
Yes, because there is a moment where she does find him under the bed, and he says he's, like, hiding from the heavens, he's hiding from the stars, and so
Yeah, because
when we do
that's part of
of his
his
hallucinations and
condition.
yeah.
He hallucinates, he thinks he sees
Venus and
Venus
yes, and he
herself.
loves astronomy, so that's like a big
Yeah,
passion of his, so it's just kind of then transferred to these hallucinations and these manic episodes that he has.
yeah. But he is directly trying to avoid that
Yeah.
by doing this hide under the bed situation. But you see this
Yes.
one particular it's the again, you're calling it an episode. It's a little bit of a disrespectful term to use, but you're calling it that. That he has.
Yeah.
No, not you. I just mean you, the
Yes, the
general term, not you
yeah.
as in you,
I'm like,
Janine.
"Oh, did I say that?" Like, "Oh,
No, I
sorry."
don't mean you. We're calling it that, I should say.
Yes, yes.
We're calling it that. And now I've forgotten what I was talking about. No. The when he has his first known to Charlotte
Yeah,
hallucination situation, it's really scary.
yeah,
It's really intense. He's kind of twitching. He looks like almost not human a little bit,
yeah, he takes his
and
all his clothes off, he's shouting into the
he's
sky.
he's muttering to himself.
Yeah,
He's very, very erratic, very, very shaky, as you've said, shouting into the sky at one point and takes all his clothes off. And he doesn't want to be doing that kind of thing.
yeah,
That's why he is hiding under the bed at this later stage. I want to be, the heavens can't see me down here.
yes, I'm hiding under from the heavens, I'm hiding from the stars, and yeah, so that's kind of his little secret spot. Um, and even when he first met Charlotte, she, is scared because she's scared of the unknown. No one will tell her who this king is, what he looks like, anything. So she's trying to get over the garden wall, and he finds her climbing over the garden wall. And it's this really cute first meeting between the two of them.
Mm,
And so when he introduces himself and says he's the king, she's like, "Oh, well, I didn't know you're gonna look like
yeah.
that," kind of thing. And it's instant attraction. And so when he does tell her things about himself, he says he's a farmer. He says, like, if I wasn't a king, I'd be a farmer. And so
He
uh
does love farming.
yeah, so she calls him Farmer George. So in this kind of final scene, she goes to his room and she says, "George, Farmer George, come hide from the heavens with me." And they go under
Yeah,
the
and
bed
this
together.
is this is again when they're older,
Yes,
in
and so she
present day
gets with her
Bridgerton.
whole wig and dress, she doesn't care, she's,
Yeah,
like, having this, like, moment of frivolity with her love, and they go under the
yeah,
bed together, and she tells him the news of their son making an heir, and his line will continue on kind of thing, and she's telling him the happy news, and they're celebrating, and then they're just looking at each other, holding hands, and they switch back and forth from, old Charlotte looking at young George and old George looking at young Charlotte, and it's so
yeah. They see it. It really is. She goes into that room with so much joy. I
Yeah,
mean, he is in the process of doing another draw on the wall, mutter to himself,
yeah,
shake about session, but he's obviously, in his 70s at this point,
yeah,
however old he may be. Um, and she has to kind of speak to him very calmly, as you would imagine she's
yeah.
done now for decades, and he's more than capable of doing this sort of thing. Let's go, like, yeah, let's go under the bed. Let's go under the bed. And as soon as he gets under that bed, he's fine again.
He knows who she is,
He's
it's
he's
his
fine
love, it's
again.
his
Oh,
Charlotte.
Charlotte, yeah,
Yeah.
you didn't go over the wall. We're
Yeah.
here, and it's just, oh God, it's
Ah, it's so good.
tugs at your
Yes,
heart.
yes, and another moment just to kind of, we're closing out, we get to know Brimsley. Brimsley,
Oh yeah, let's speak a
her
bit
kind of
about Brimsley.
her queen's man who was assigned to her when she first came, and, she formed this relationship with him, so we see young Brimsley, and he has a relationship with the king's man, Reynolds, and so they have kind of this secret love,
Yeah,
and the 2 of them have to work together to get the queen and king together and help work out through all the problems with the 2 of them, and he's devoted to her. He ends up caring about her. I love in this moment when Charlotte is pregnant and she doesn't know what's going on with George, and, he's being very kind of distant to her, and she's just really hurt, and he's walking behind her. He has to follow 5 steps behind, and she just stops and she starts to cry, and he reaches his hand out to
mm,
put his hand on her, and then she continues walking. And so I love the relationship that we learn kind of grows, and even we see a little bit of that with Brimsley and, the present day Brimsley talking to the queen candidly and really
yeah.
expressing this care for her. And
They
then we
seem
get a
to
scene at a
the
ball, where they're playing the string quartet version of, "I Will Always Love You," and,
yes.
Young Brimsley and young Reynolds are dancing together as this ball is kind of going on.
Secretly on a hill
Secretly
somewhere.
yes, dancing, and then it intercuts to old Brimsley dancing alone by himself, and that scene always makes me
Yes.
cry because he's just imagining his lost love, Reynolds, and we don't know what happens to Reynolds, but we can
No, what
assume.
does happen to Reynolds? Is he
No, they never tell
died?
us, so I assume he died, and, but Brimsley still loves him, and then, during "I Will Always Love You," and it's just heartbreaking, so,
It
yeah.
really is. Brimsley's a really great character in this
Yeah.
season because he gets next to nothing in actual Bridgerton, does he? He
Yeah,
gets
he's just
very
kind of a
little
little the queen's
time
little gossip,
dedicated to
and she
him.
kind of shits on him a little bit, and he's like the Kenny the cameraman
Yeah.
to Gail Weathers
But
kind
he
of.
is. He's almost
Yeah,
he's almost he's almost a laughable figure. He's almost a
yeah,
comic figure.
yeah,
But in Queen Charlotte, he is really given a lot of time dedicated to him. You get that full story of him. You see his devotion to her
yeah.
and his love, his little secret love with Reynolds as well, and Reynolds' devotion to George as well. You
Yes, I
you
love
get a
when he
bit of
tries to
that.
protect George from the doctors who are harming him, and he
Yeah.
he wants to protect him, and he's protecting his secret, and he's advocating for him, and, oh, yeah,
Yeah, it does make you wonder that I want to either know that Reynolds died or see Reynolds in an upcoming Bridgerton season.
yes, and just have a
I
flashback moment of what at least what
or
happened to
just have
him.
something because
Yes,
obviously,
Brimsley talk
oh,
to somebody and tell them what happened or something.
something, yeah, because obviously Queen Charlotte as a season came out after Bridgerton season
Yeah.
2. So this is the last Bridgerton thing we have before this
Yeah.
third
He's
season
yeah.
turns up next week as of the air date of this.
I think you know,
So
based off my name, I think you know when we're recording this, but yeah.
yes. Yeah. Um, but I kind of feel like I would need that closure on Reynolds. And
Okay.
yeah, okay, it might be enough to see Brimsley dancing on his own to assume that whatever happened, they're not seeing each other anymore.
Yes,
Whatever
because the
happened.
queen even asks him, which is a silly question on the queen's part, "Did you never have a
Right.
family, Brimsley?" And I'm just thinking like, "Bitch, I'm always here with you when I have time to make a
That's right.
family."
Did you never were you never married, Brimsley? I am here all the
5
time.
steps behind you
Every
every damn day. When would I ever be able to, like, have
every
a
day,
family?
all day, every day. Who on earth would I get that would live my life with me? I'm devoted to you and the
And the
king,
king, yeah.
your majesty.
Right?
But there's a tiny little tear in old Brimsley's eyes when he says this. It's
Yeah.
almost like there was a chance, there was a possibility. Is
Yeah.
he happy with how his life has gone? I think so, but it brings up that question of if you're going to make choices, well, you can never go back and make choices in your life. Can you make the different choice? As much as you might
Yes.
want to at some stages, you can never do. And there is an example of Brimsley, I think, having the thought of, could have, but I haven't.
Yeah, but I mean, then can we see him as fortunate like Violet, that he even had a
Exactly.
great love at all, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Because he did. They were clearly very smitten with each other,
Yes.
Brimsley and Reynolds.
Yeah.
But no, it's great. I just felt, look, Bridgerton's emotional anyway. Bridgerton gets you invested in romance anyway, but what this did, I think, here's the difference. Both Bridgerton seasons got me invested in romance. Queen Charlotte got me invested in love.
Okay.
And there's a difference between romance and love. Romance can be fleeting, but you see through Queen Charlotte that love persists. Look, what's that quote? What am I trying
What
to
that
think of?
vision the vision says, and
Yeah, I think it is
in
that, isn't it? Love.
in
What is it called? What is
oh,
it?
I don't
What's the
know, it's
quote?
so
Love doesn't
good.
die, or something like that. It's a great quote. WandaVision.
Yes. Or
Um,
no, it's is it?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's at the
Yes.
end of that. I don't know. We're gonna try and find
Yes,
it
we're gonna
because
have
I
to
feel
find
like
it.
we
Oh, okay,
we
vision
have to
quote.
close on it.
What it's grief, if not love persevering.
persevering.
Yeah.
It is. It is love persevering. That is what Queen Charlotte is.
Yeah.
And you see that, and it's so much more impactful.
And she's still
So
kind of, like,
much.
presently grieving George every day that she can't be with him,
Yeah.
but it's her love persevering, keeping her kind of locked in this place with
Yeah.
him, despite not being with him, in the way she would like to be.
Yeah. But, she she goes to him when appropriate. She
Yeah,
sees him when appropriate. And she, as we've seen in both seasons of Bridgerton, is able to have small little conversations with him still. And as
yeah.
you see at the end of this, they even share a nice kiss under the bed
Yes,
to wrap
yes.
up the season of Queen Charlotte. It is just, it's beautiful. Yes, it gets me very excited for um
Season 3.
for season 3, of course, but mainly from not a Penelope and Colin standpoint, from
Not
a
a
Lady
pollen
Danbury
standpoint.
standpoint,
Okay.
from a Charlotte standpoint. Like, what's Charlotte gonna do? Is Charlotte gonna be really happy that she's now got young baby Queen Victoria on the way, or perhaps having been born?
Okay. I like that you're, like, really interested in the characters that we followed here for season 3.
I am. I
Yeah,
really am. And
okay.
Violet,
Everyone's focused
obviously.
on
Mm.
Pollen, and you're focused on, like, the other really interesting
Pol
characters. I like that. That's what
Pollen.
that's what they're calling
That is
them,
such a
Pollen.
stupid name.
Pollen.
I
Well,
hate
because,
that.
like, the whole kind of icon of Bridgerton is this bee, because the bee is what killed
Oh,
Edward.
that's true.
Yes. Well, no, like, if you look at Bridgerton things, like, the bee is, like, part
Yeah.
of the theming of it.
Oh,
So,
I've noticed that, yeah.
the fact that they're named together as Pollen is, like,
Oh, dear. I didn't even
perfect.
think about that. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yes.
It makes it sound like bawling, which just
Ballin'.
reminds me of the fact that when we did an episode on the main show of
Oh, yeah.
Gilda
Oh,
with
yes, and, like,
George Macready's character is called
was
Barlin, and
ballin'. You can't
I
just
can't
not.
pronounce the name properly. My accent doesn't pronounce his name. It either pronounces his name as Barlin off of The Hobbit, or Ballin, like
Like
he's
that
balling.
ballin'.
I
Oh
can't
my
say
gosh,
his
well,
name properly.
Pollen is up for season 3.
Ballin. Yeah.
So, get ready. I'm so excited that you have been into Bridgerton.
Yeah.
Mission successful, and I'm excited
Mission
to
very
talk the
successful.
first part of season 3 next week.
Yes, we are. First half. First half.
Yes,
So it'll
4
be
episodes.
four episodes. Four
Yeah.
episodes. We will be back on babbling about Bridgerton. Subscribe, ding the notification bell on this YouTube channel. Subscribe to the It's a Wonderful podcast feed for all the great shows we have every single week on all major podcast platforms. Of course, if you want to support us on Patreon or donate in any way, there is a link in the description to do that. There's also social media links down there. It's been scrolling down at the bottom of the screen all episode long as well. I do think there's only really one thing left to do. Impressions. Another Lady Danbury impression might not go amiss. I mean, we do like a
Okay.
Lady Danbury
We do,
impression,
we love
unless
her.
unless of course you want to do an impression of Lord Danbury.
Air. 3, 2, 1. Quiet, woman.
Ridiculous man with his ridiculous Frederick Douglass hairstyle. Oh, dear. Bye. Bridgerton.